Let's pretend you are a total noob. You've never played D&D before in your life. Well, don't worry, because this is where to start. In this video, we are going to break down every class available in D&D in terms of the best for beginners. So what does that even mean? Well, basically, a class is the type of character that you're going to be playing as. It's not your race, but it's what your character can do. So wizards cast spells, barbarians cut people's heads off, bards get laid, that kind of thing. Basically, I'm going to be ranking things based on how much fun you will have on your first ever session. But before we dive in, you don't have to be a gold dragon to take a legendary action. You can do it yourself by subscribing and smashing that like button. Okay, let's dive in. First up, we have the artificer. Artificers are basically magical inventors. They're cool, don't get me wrong, they're really cool, they're really versatile. In fact, they might be the most versatile class in the game bar one. They're really good at patching up holes in your team, but here's the thing, we're a noob, we don't know what the holes in our team composition are going to be. We don't know what to do to help the barbarian because we've never seen a barbarian before. We're totally new, and because we're so new, all those options for customization, all the subclasses that have totally different playstyles, that's just going to be completely overwhelming. Now, they're not so complicated that they go in D, because worst case scenario, you can always just swing a sword as an artificer. They can do that, and you'll be okay. Also, artificers require a lot of planning ahead with the magical items you're going to be building and infusing, which is a lot for new players to have to think about when really you just want to be focusing on rolling the right dice and getting your head around the roleplay, that kind of thing. Playing an artificer is like someone dumping an entire Lego Death Star kit in front of you and then tearing up the instructions and telling you they did you a favor. It's like, sure, now I can build anything I want, but really, I'm probably just going to make something terrible because I don't know what I'm doing. So you may as well have just given me the Death Star instructions, and I could have done something way better. Next up, we have the barbarian. Hell yeah, S, easy S. Maybe the best class in the game for beginners, maybe the best class in the game, full stop. Barbarians are really strong from level 1 to level 20. All the way through, you're going to be amazing. Their big gimmick is rage, which they get at level 1, which is a finite resource, so it does require a little bit of management, but basically you get twice a day, you get to rage, and you get stronger, and you take half damage from when people hit you. So it basically makes you a total beast in combat. And then at level 2, you get reckless attack, which means that you can deal damage more reliably, but you're also going to be taking more damage, which is a very thrilling way to play, basically. You're going to be on the front lines, it's going to be very dramatic, it's very easy to have fun in combat when you're a barbarian. You also have some really cool multi-class options later on in the game if the barbarian is too simple for you. They actually multi-class great with druid and paladin and rogue. All of them are really good options, so if you're learning as you go along and you decide, okay, I get the hang of this now, I want to try some new stuff, you can just take a few levels in another class and you'll still be really strong and you'll be doing some really unique and powerful things. Barbarians are like the first Jurassic Park film. Sure, they're simple, but they're freaking amazing, so why not? Alright, so next up we have the Bard, which is one of the best classes in the game, just generally, and it goes in C. Probably goes higher than Artificer though, yeah, there we go. Bards are really, really good, they're really, really versatile, and they're great fun. The problem is they're also very complicated, but they're still great for beginners in a way because they rely on charisma for their casting spells. So basically, charisma is going to be your highest stat, which means that if you want to do stuff outside of combat, charisma is really useful. If you're going to persuade a noble or seduce a bar wench, something like that, you're going to have a really good chance at success because you're just so damn charismatic. You're just so handsome, so lovable, people will just do what you say. Which is really nice to have when you're new to roleplay because you might be a bit nervous about acting in front of friends or even strangers if you're playing online. But knowing that you've got a really good chance at succeeding when you do is a big boost for that kind of stuff. So that's a really nice element to the Bard, which I think keeps them out of D, even though they are very complicated. They're also great team players, and Bardic Inspiration's a fantastic ability that lets you boost up other players, but that comes with decisions as well, because you have a lot of supporting spells like Polymorph and Haste, so you have to know when to cast them and who to cast them on. So there's always tons of decisions. A well-played Bard can do basically anything, but we're noobs. We've only learned to not literally eat the dice a few minutes ago, so yeah, C. Just a bit too complicated for beginners. Spellcasters, on that subject, spellcasters will always score lower than sort of martial characters because of that spellcasting element being so complicated. And here we have a cleric, which is another spellcaster, so obviously I'm going to put it in A. Because that's how good clerics are. Even though they are full spellcasters, they are so good that they go in A. Part of the reason for this is clerics are just so much freaking fun. They're just so much fun to play as. You'd think they'd be all like gaudy and super religious, but actually I've always loved playing clerics, and everyone I've played with in a campaign has had great fun playing clerics. And they cast off their wisdom, which is actually a really useful skill to have, because it gives you a high stat increase in perception and insight, which come up loads in a game. Perception might be the most valuable skill to have proficiency in, and clerics are amazing at it. They're always noticing stuff, which is really helpful in keeping the campaign going on. It means you're going to be able to sneak advantages all the time outside of combat. Same with insight, you're going to spot stuff, which comes in really handy. They also can get heavy armor proficiency, which is just nuts for a spellcaster. To be that tanky, spellcasters are usually balanced by being very squishy and easy to kill, so they have to stay away from the front lines, they stay back and kind of avoid combat. Clerics don't need to. They can walk around in a full suit of armor if you spec into it. They really are that good. And they have perfect spells for both healing and damage. But most importantly, clerics get full access to their spell list all the time. So, normally, for most spellcasters, every time you level up, you pick a few spells, and those are the spells that you know, and then you can cast them anytime you like. Clerics get access to all their spells when they level up. You can just pick any of them, but you have to prepare the ones you want each day for that day. So you can't cast any spell at any time, you just need to prepare a few for the day, and then you can cast those. This is amazing for beginners just because if you're not sure about what spells are good, you can try some out. You don't need to lock yourself into a spell until you level up next. You just try one out. If it doesn't work out well that day, you just try a different spell the following day. And it's like, yeah, awesome. You get more experience, loads of time to play around with stuff, loads of versatility. You don't need to worry about choosing what spell is going to be good for the next 8 sessions or however long it is till you next level up. So that alone puts clerics much higher above most other spellcasters for beginners. The only reason they're not in S is just because of that added element of complexity that spellcasters have, which can be a lot for beginners. It might be too much for you to worry about. If you just want to enjoy yourself, it might be a bit too much, but otherwise, yeah, clerics are fantastic. Easy A. Next up is druids. Just like clerics, they get access to all their spells, which is a huge boost. They're not quite, and they also cast off wisdom as well, so another great example for that. They're not quite as good, I would say, for beginners. They're a B, but they're a very high B. They'd be like a B+, A-. The gimmick of druids is wild shape, so you can turn into a spider if you want to sort of stealth under a door and listen into what people are saying, stuff like that. They're really good for all that stuff. And then at later levels, they can turn into animals that fly and animals that swim, which is nuts how useful that actually is. It's really useful to be able to fly. But yeah, the downside is, again, they're heavy spellcasters. They don't have the healing options that clerics have, but they do have some really nice splashy effect spells, like a tidal wave, stuff that's just really high impact. That's a lot of fun. And just generally, I would say the druid is a B, but if you play as Circle of the Moon druid, which I don't want to get too into subclasses in this video, but that's a subclass that lets you wild shape into more powerful forms, more combat-oriented forms, I would put them in A-. So I'd say the druid generally is a B, but if you're a Circle of the Moon druid as a beginner, you can go into A, because that class is just so powerful at the beginning of the game. You can wild shape into a bear from level 2, which is so much stronger than what anyone else in your party will be doing at that level, and just knock people's heads off. Just go around just slaughtering goblins as a bear. You're basically unstoppable at level 2. Smash like for bear decapitations. But yeah, druids are great fun, great class, one of my personal favourite classes. Being a wisdom caster is really good. I'd say that, yeah, they're just a high B, or Circle of the Moon, you can probably pop it into low A. Really good choice, fair choice. Not the best for beginners, but if you've never played one, definitely give them a shot. Druids are like Disney's Robin Hood. You don't have to be a furry to enjoy it, but if you are a furry, it's going to be the best experience you've ever had. Right, next we have Fighter. Some people say fighters are boring. I say they're not cutting people's heads off with enough passion. Fighters are S. In fact, they might even be... Are they better than barbarian? They probably are better than barbarian for beginners. I don't think they're better than a barbarian generally, but for beginners, fighter is probably the best class in the game. They are really, bloody good. Basically, the whole gimmick of fighters is they have much more ASIs than other characters, which are ability score increases. So every few levels, you get a chance to bump your stats. So if you're just going for the most simple character you can that's always going to be good, you can just play a fighter, just go down the fighter route. You can be a human fighter, and you can just take these ASIs and bump them into your stats and just be really powerful. Or you can substitute your stat increases for feats. And this is where the fighter gets really customizable and really fun, while also still being very straightforward to use. Because basically, you can take these feats, which are like optional bonuses, to increase your combat proficiency in interesting ways. So you can get one called Polearm Master, which lets you use polearms to attack people when they come within range, so you get an extra attack. And you can combo them with other feats to get really powerful effects, like Sentinel. So yeah, fighters are sort of as complicated as you want to make them within reason, but they're always going to be simple enough that you're not going to have to worry about too much. You're just going to have a great time being a fighter, kicking ass. And also, unlike every other class maybe in the game, fighters will always be good. For example, barbarians, they only get 2 rages a day at the start of the game. So, you know, if you get into 2 fights and you rage twice and then there's another fight before you can take a long rest, fight number 3, suddenly the barbarian doesn't look very strong. If it can't rage, not that great. If a cleric or a bard runs out of spell slots, you know, suddenly, not really very good. But a fighter, no, you're good to go always. As long as you're alive, you could have fought 20 battles in one day. As long as you're alive, you're good to go. You can just keep going. So they're amazing at that. So if you're in a campaign where your DM's going to throw a lot of fights at you in one day, or you're doing long dungeon crawls without any long rests, fighters really go up in power. At that point, they're one of the most powerful classes in the game as well. Yeah, easy S. Monk. Reject humanity, return to monk. Monks are an A. Are they better than clerics? Probably. It's close. These two are very close. Basically, monks used to be garbage. They used to be so bad in earlier editions of D&D. And then 5e came around, the 5th edition, which is what we play now. And they got everything. They're so good. They're just a really, really good martial character. So, basically, the gimmick around monks is they fight with their bare hands more often than not, or like monk weapons, you know, nunchucks and shurikens and stuff. And they have these things called key points. So it's kind of like being a fighter, in that you're fighting up close, but you have key points which let you do extra things. So you can spend a key point to stun someone when you attack them, or you can spend a key point to attack them even more. So there is some stuff going on which makes it a little more complicated with the key points, but it's not overwhelming at all. You'll have a great time as a monk. You don't need to worry about the key points too much, and they're great fun. And you can do other cool stuff like run up walls and run across the water and stuff like that eventually. It's really cool. Great class. I honestly think the reason why monks aren't played more is because people feel like you have to take the monk roleplay aspect in sort of like the Tibetan monk stereotypical style. But monks, really all they are, they're just people who fight with their fists. So, for example, you don't have to be a stereotypical Tibetan monk, you know, really religious or whatever. You can just be a guy, say, who gets into loads of bar fights. You can be a drunken master monk who's just a dude who gets into a crap ton of bar fights and has learned how to exploit his opponent's openings. And yeah, awesome. So don't feel limited in roleplay just because the character is called a monk and we have monks in real life. You can take it in any direction you like. Paladin. A. Maybe even the best in A as well. Paladins are really, really good. They're essentially fighters with magic, I'd say. They get proficiency with heavy armor, so you're going to be a total tank. You're going to have really high AC. They can carry a shield, and they get spell slots which they can use to heal or deal more damage, or even take some utility options. I heard someone write once on Reddit, I was looking at ages ago, and they were talking about paladins, and they said, if you don't know what you want to do, but you know you want to do it really well, be a paladin. And that's totally true. They can kind of do it all. They are a bit more complicated than the S tier options, so I'm keeping them in A, but it's close. They're absolutely A++. Yeah, like I said, the big gimmick is Divine Smite, which lets you trade your spell slots for more damage if you want to. So you can attack someone, and instead of casting a first level spell later, you can burn that spell slot so it disappears, but you deal extra damage now. If you really need to burst your damage now, if you just need that damage to go in, you can do it. And if you don't need the damage right now, you can save it and then you can potentially heal up some friends later. And they also have Lay on Hands, which is a way of healing people for free. It doesn't cost you any spell slot, you just need to touch them, and you get that from level 1. So they're a very cool class, very powerful, all round very strong. Okay, so Rangers used to be in D, easily, just because they were too weak. They're not too complicated or anything, they just used to be trash. And I hate to say it because I like the concepts a lot, but they were just too underpowered. But then Tasha's Cauldron of Everything came out, which was a recent expansion, and gave them a really much needed power boost, which bumps them up, I think, to about a B. The problem Rangers still have is that a lot of their abilities are quite niche, and the stuff that they're doing, other classes can do better. However, with the new Tasha's rulebook, the Beastmaster archetype, which is basically the reason everyone plays a Ranger, because you want an animal companion, which is just awesome, has got a massive boost. Like, it used to be the case where if you chose a beast companion, it was just, they used that beast's stat block. So if you wanted a wolf as your companion, you would have literally a wolf following you around, and the wolf isn't really that strong. Like, by the end of the game, it doesn't matter, it means nothing. Whereas now you get a spiritual companion which can take the form of a wolf, but it actually increases in power as you increase in power too. So that element to them is way stronger now, and definitely puts them in B. It's like I say, it's just the problem is a lot of what they can do, other classes can do better. And you don't want to be spending a lot of your energy just trying to keep up with the rest of your party. You don't want to be spending resources and time working out how to optimize your build just to keep up. You want to be doing that stuff to put you over the edge if you want to. So they're still not the strongest class, but they're definitely a lot better than they used to be. Yeah, I think B is very reasonable for them. And then we have Rogue. S. Rogues are amazing. Oh my god. Rogues are so good. Sneak attack is fantastic. It gives you a plus d6 to your damage roll if you attack with advantage. And rogues are really good at generating that advantage because they're always hiding. You can hide as a bonus action. And your stealth is massive because you get expertise from level 1. And then also, the expertise you get at level 1 makes you really good at out-of-combat stuff, so you can be really good at persuading people to do stuff, or you can be very good at, obviously, stealing, tricking people. It's just loads of fun. The roleplay opportunities are loads of fun as well, because, you know, everyone understands what a rogue is about. You know, you're sneaky, you're a bit underhanded. Who doesn't love doing that? Being a chaotic neutral or a chaotic good rogue, it can be such a fun thing to do. You know, your heart's in the right place, but you'll do what needs to be done. It's just great. Just really good. It's not even a downside. The only thing I'd say, if you're playing a rogue, make sure you can see in the dark. So take a race that has dark vision, or find a way of giving yourself that dark vision, because you want to be operating in the dark a lot. And if you can't see in it, you're not going to get as many advantages. So it's just something to bear in mind. Seeing in the dark is very important for a rogue, so make sure you take that. I think it's fine at the bottom of S. I think it's better than a paladin, and I think it's just slightly worse than a barbarian and a fighter, but yeah, really good class, definitely recommend. And going from one of the best classes in the game to the absolute worst for beginners is sorcerer, D. It feels bad to put sorcerer in D, but they're terrible. Oh my gosh, do not play them if you're a beginner. They are the easiest by far class to completely screw yourself over in so many ways. The problem with sorcerers is, unlike when we talked about clerics, sorcerers don't get to choose from any of their spells. You have to choose a spell every time you level up, and that's your spell. And unlike bards, sorcerers have a lot of spells that are kind of traps. Like, they're very situational. If you pick the wrong spell, or the wrong couple of spells to cast as a sorcerer, you might find that you are totally useless for the entire of the next 8 sessions, because you just can't do enough. And then you add on to that all the complexity that just comes with being a magic caster anyway, like keeping up concentration and having a very low hit dice so you're easy to kill. You've got to factor in their ability, which is sorcery points. It's just another element to your spellcasting. It's a load more decisions to make. Sorcery points can sort of upgrade your spells, which is cool, but if you're already just trying to learn the rules of the game, it's just way too much. I think sorcerers are the worst class. If they're in D, I would not recommend. I would say don't. As your first class, do not take them. If you're more experienced, hell yeah. Awesome class, a lot of fun. If you're new, no. Don't worry about it. You can do better, mate. You can do better. Now we come to Warlock, which I think is the most misunderstood character or class in the game, I should say. People talk about Warlocks like they're spellcasters, and they sort of make fun of them. But really, Warlocks are a lot closer to fighters. I think they go in B. and I think they're probably better than a ranger, worse than a druid. Basically, the idea is you cast Eldritch Blast, which is a cantrip, so even though it's a spell, you can cast it as many times as you like. You won't run out of spell slots. And then you use your invocations, which you get as you level up, to boost the power of Eldritch Blast. So Eldritch Blast is like your sword if you're a fighter. And just like fighters who get extra attacks as they level up, warlocks get extra Eldritch Blasts as they level up. So it's very hard to build a bad warlock if all you're doing is casting Eldritch Blast all the time, because, well, you'll be fine. Basically, like how can you mess that up? You just take invocations that boost up the Eldritch Blast, and then you just run with it and you have a great time. You just blow everything up. Another thing to talk about just before we move on about warlocks is the fact that you choose a patron like a cleric chooses a god. Clerics are simps, basically. They love their god. Oh my god, they can't wait to talk to you about their god. You kind of have a similar dynamic with sort of like an all-powerful deity as a warlock, but the relationship can be a lot more nuanced. You don't necessarily have to have a good relationship with your patron. You could have taken a deal with them. It's like making a deal with the devil. You could have taken a deal in a moment of panic where you needed power urgently to save your family or something. So you make a deal with them, and you have this very complicated, very fun to roleplay relationship with this demon lord or something that your DM can roleplay as, which can be great for moving the story along. Just like clerics, you always have a reason to be somewhere or to do something, because it can be what your patron wants you to do. So it's very easy to find a narrative for your characters. It's very easy to have long-term aims and goals as a warlock, which is great when you're maybe new to creating a character and coming up with that stuff. By the time you've come up with what patron you want, you're already halfway done on creating a character. So that's another thing that warlocks are great at. And in fact, it's such a big point that I might even put them at the top of B, now that I think about it. Because it is such a handy thing if you're new to have your character almost ready-made. And finally, yeah, we have the wizard, D. Very sad times. But wizards are just too complicated. They're like sorcerers. Just like sorcerers, you only get to choose your spells when you level up. But unlike sorcerers, you also have to prepare your spells every day. So it's like homework, the class. You have to be so knowledgeable, or at least willing to put in so much time into what you think's going to come up, and you have to constantly be choosing and making decisions that you think's going to benefit you. And if you make the wrong one, you're not as screwed as you are with a sorcerer, because at least wizards can learn other spells in other ways. You can buy spells, you can find spell books. If you talk to your DM, if you kind of lock yourself out of being useful, you can kind of unlock yourself by learning a couple of useful spells. But wizards, yeah, really, really difficult class to play as, and they've got a reputation for being really powerful, and they are at the end of the game. But at level 17, everyone's really powerful, and most campaigns don't get that far. Compared to any other class, they're not much better all the way through the game. It's not like a wizard's so much better than a barbarian at level 5 or something. You have all this extra work and all this complexity, and the reward is your versatility. It's not like you're really powerful. It's just that you can do almost anything. So that's the advantage. They're great for experienced players. They're great if you've played one character before and you want a challenge. Awesome. But for beginners, yeah, they're definitely better than sorcerers, but they're still absolutely in D, I would say, sadly for them. But you know, at least they've got company, so wizards and sorcerers can hang out. Playing a wizard is like going to the gym every day for 10 years. I mean, sure, you will end up buff as hell, you'll end up so strong, it'll be amazing, but who can be bothered? Oh my god, you know, I just don't have the time, I got stuff I gotta do. Just give me a barbarian, I'll just cut some heads off. So yeah. There you have my opinion on the best classes for beginners. If you are a beginner, if you watch this video and you are a beginner, I'd seriously consider going for S or A characters. And then if one of the B tier characters really speaks to you, you know, that's great too. But maybe you think I'm talking absolute nonsense. Maybe you completely disagree and you think Sorcerer should be in S tier. Because you played a Sorcerer for your first character and it was amazing. If that's the case, tell me about it. Tell me about it in the comments down below, because I'd love to hear your stories of your first characters, and it'll be really interesting for other new players to see your thoughts and opinions, so please do that. And remember to like this video and subscribe for more D&D content. If this video gets 25 likes, I'll say, I'll make more tier lists, and if it doesn't, then I know you guys aren't interested in them, and I'll do something else. I've got loads of cool stuff coming up, so definitely check that out. But yeah, stay fresh, roll lucky, and I'll see you next time. Peace.